Welcome, everyone, to our final session in our Wellness Wednesday series with a focus on pillars of health and disease prevention. My name is Donna Russell. I'm the nurse manager for our integrative medicine department, and I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Lori Shore-Moritoff. She's board certified in both internal medicine, in integrative functional medicine, as well as a licensed medical acupuncturist. We will be monitoring the chat throughout the session. If we can answer in real time, we will. Otherwise, rest assured, we'll get to your question at the end of the presentation. Thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moritoff.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. If you want to say hi on the chat, we'd love to hear from you. This is going to be our last Wellness Wednesday for now, but we always will have more in the future. And today we're going to talk about our continuing foundations of health, focusing on environmental detoxification today. And as you remember, the reason we're doing this is, of course, to feel better, but also think more clearly, boost our immune system. Now, environmental toxins are super, super important for this. My first job out of college was actually for the US EPA, and my major at UC Berkeley was environmental science. So I really have a strong connection to this topic. Environmental medicine is something that's not taught. Heavily, I'll say, in medical school, but is such an important topic. When you look at what's going on with our health and how younger people are getting cancer these days, I think you can recognize that chemicals really have a big part in this health journey we're on. So we're going to really focus on environmental detoxification. I think some of this subject matter can be a little bit dark, right? Because we're talking about this toxic world we live in. But I always want us to picture the sunshine, the brightness, and the darkness because there's so much we can do. And even if you do have an environmental burden, which we all do, with certain steps that we'll be learning today, you can feel so much better in just a couple of weeks. So we'll get started with our agenda. So, how to thrive in a toxic world. That's our topic today. um, we're going to talk about what are environmental toxins, how to minimize our exposure, avoidance. One of the grandfathers of this topic is Dr. Joe Pizzorno, and he always teaches avoidance, 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 just like, real estate, location, location, location. So minimizing is something that we're going to really focus on today. I also think it's really important to learn how we detoxify because if you do decide to go on a detoxification journey, it's really important to be set up for detoxification. You want all your systems open and supported so that when you start mobilizing these toxins, they leave your body instead of being recirculated. And then ways to support detox. So here's a picture. Let's talk about all these things here. Um, so air pollution, right? So in industrial air pollution, there's heavy metals, there's petrochemicals that affect us. Now, these oil bottles I also had in our food webinar. And at that point, I was making the point that these are cheap seed oils. You don't want to have seed oils, but these are also in plastic. So even if you get like a healthy olive oil, I want you to make sure it's not in plastic because then those plastics will be transferred to the oil, microplastics and chemicals alike. Thermal receipts. This is a big one. I think I am in contact or have the opportunity to be in contact with a thermal receipt every day of my life. And it's been shown that 2 seconds of touching that thermal receipt will put PBA into your body, which is linked to endocrine disorders, um, and obesity and diabetes. So thermal receipts are a big one. Mold, environmental toxin is also a big issue. Water pollution, pesticides, and popcorn. So those microwave popcorns. Now, popcorn itself is fine, but when you do a microwave popcorn, the inside of that bag is coated with plastic and it gets right into your food. So just a little bit visual reminders of what we're talking about today. Okay, so when you think of environmental toxins, I usually break it up into two categories. Okay, so one is heavy metals, and the other one is chemicals. And that's just an easy way to think about it. Heavy metals are the big four, are arsenic, lead, mercury, and cadmium. Those are linked to the most diseases like cancer. And then chemicals, phthalates, bisphenols, and pesticides are the biggest sources. And the way we're exposed to this, the biggest source, 60%, I believe, is in our food. Okay, so just changing what we eat, paying attention to how our food is packaged and stored in our refrigerator is a really big impact. Air, both indoors and outdoors, water, of course, and then some of our personal care products put us in contact with these chemicals and heavy metals. Arsenic used to be used in makeup, so that used to be a really big source. And then new furniture, flooring, and carpet release chemicals and volatile organic compounds. Okay, and this is the big seven from the EPA. So you could see here, number one is arsenic, lead, mercury, cadmium makes the list as well as some of these chemical sources. Now I have next to vinyl chloride and polychlorinated biphenyls, the word dioxin. Dioxin is sort of like a grab bag term for many of these chemicals. Dioxins are released when there's fires, okay? So like in the Palisades, when there was that big fire, there was a lot of dioxins in the air. So that's something to consider, when there's fires around, that it's not just the smoke, that it does carry chemicals and toxins. Benzene is found in petrochemicals, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, how do they hurt us, right? So one way they hurt us is directly damaging the DNA. When we're exposed to these chemicals, the chemicals themselves can form what's called a free radical in our body. It can sort of have an attitude about it, and it can get into our cells and actually break our DNA, which can cause unregulated growth and cancer. They can also stimulate receptors, the PBA, right? The bisphenols act as xenoestrogens, right? So why is that important? So this causes endocrine disorders. This causes breast cancer, right? So we know if we have breast cancer or we're recovering, surviving breast cancer, we don't want to put an artificial estrogen in our body. So it's really something to think about. They also can block repair mechanisms and enzymes. They displace nutrients. One that really is can be disruptive to bone is lead, right? Think of all the leaded gas. When I was a kid, we had leaded gas everywhere. And that when we breathe it in would get settled into our bones. And then later, right, if we have a little osteopenia, a little osteoporosis, if our vitamin D is low, we don't know it, if we're not eating enough calcium in our diet, we need to get some calcium from our bone. If we have a lot of acid in our diet and we use our bones to buffer that acid, we're going to leach that lead right into our body. And one of the things it can cause besides cancer is hypertension. So as we get older, when I see people develop hypertension and they don't have a familial history, I always think of lead. They also deplete antioxidants. Glutathione is the biggest antioxidant we have in our body. It quenches a lot of these chemicals we're exposed to. It's super important. I'll be teaching you ways to nourish your glutathione stores. And glutathione also helps us with metabolizing Tylenol, right? So it is a really important antioxidant to have, and the heavy metals and the chemicals deplete that. And then something we always think about with cancer is immune balance, right? Or with long COVID or any viral illness we have. And these chemicals actually directly inhibit our T cells, right? And can cause immune dysregulation. Okay, so here are the diseases they cause, and we sort of went over these a little bit. I want to make a mention of heart attack and stroke. Okay, so we always think about cholesterol, diabetes, hypertension as risk factors for stroke, and they definitely are, but so are heavy metals. Arsenic is found in a lot of ruptured plaque. Okay, hypertension, we talked about lead. autoimmune disease. PBA is highly linked to rheumatoid arthritis. All right. Kidney damage, cadmium, autism, pesticides, neuropathy, all the heavy metals, obesity, diabetes, the plastics, infertility, heavy metals and plastics, dementia, depression, and anxiety. They all are related to these chemical toxicities. And what I'll say as total environmental burden, right? Because it's not just, oh, I have a silver filling, I need to get it removed. Or, I drove by and they were spraying pesticides. It's total body burden. And so all these things tend to add together. And that's why we see some of these chronic illnesses develop later in life when things tend to accumulate. Okay, and I just want to remind you that our body does have its own repair mechanism and that we are experiencing damage all the time, but that we have tools that we can use to repair ourselves. So it's really a balance here. I tried to make this sort of like, okay, we can balance things out. So diet, sleep, reducing our exposures, that avoidance, and then providing ourselves with the right choices and learning new tools and tips. So the first one I just want to mention is arsenic, right? So a good thing to know is the how do we get exposed to arsenic? The biggest one is really drinking water and rice. Okay, so chicken used to be fed an arsenic containing compound to make it more plump and to get rid of parasites. That was stopped in the early 2020s, but there is still some arsenic in our chicken, just something to think about. And then there is some arsenic in fish, but drinking water and rice are the number one sources. Um, it does do all these things that's linked here. I won't go into that too much. The next one is lead. We talked about lead a little bit already. Again, drinking water, lead-based paints and ceramics. I had a very close friend whose son had lead poisoning as a kid, and they had a beautiful piece of stained glass in their home that he used to like to touch, and the soldering had lead in it. So you just have to be careful of things in your home. There's no safe level in the blood. And lead is one of those ones you want to catch early if possible. Whoops, too far. So the next one was mercury. And mercury, mercury used to be called Mad Hatter's disease, right? So it used to be years ago that hatters used to use mercury in the felt, and that's where the term Mad Hatter's disease comes from. Mercury is a very strong neurotoxin. I find it a lot that causes neuropathy. And a very famous functional medicine physician, Mark Hyman, had his own personal mercury history. He used to live in Japan and ate a lot of fish. He thinks that's where he got his mercury. And he started having fatigue and mental slowness that was not right for him, weakness. And he went on his own personal journey and found out that he had mercury toxicity. And then he detoxed himself over time. This is a beautiful picture of silver fillings. These silver fillings actually look pretty fresh and new. Sometimes when I look into, the mouth and look at teeth, I see them, it actually even turns the tooth a little gray right around the filling. And you could see the filling itself can get cracked sometimes. If you do have silver fillings, here's some resources to find a biological dentist, which is a very safe way to get them removed. Okay. The rest of the top seven, I just wanted to mention their sources. Um, Vinyl chlorides and PVC. Now, I was just looking to buy my son some stuff for college, like a little tray for the side of his bed. And I looked, the ingredient was PVC. So, like, oh no. So, it is everywhere, right? So, we just have to be mindful and think about that. Um, the polychlorinated biphenyls and plastics as well. There is some poisoning in fish. Now, farmed fish is a big thing. It's so easy and it's less expensive. But farmed fish has a lot of these forever chemicals in it. So that's a really important source to try to eliminate in your diet. Benzene usually comes from gas fumes, okay, and it can collect in indoor air. And cadmium is basically in our food and our water. I did want to do a special mention on BPA. Now, BPA was removed from a lot of things. The newest one is BPS. It still has some of the same dangers as BPA. Also, plastics are an important thing to consider. A really common source of these, besides the thermal receipts that we talked about, are a coffee cup, right? So you go out to get a delicious coffee and it's in a paper cup, but that paper cup is lined with PBA. Okay. And when it's hot, it leaches right into that delicious drink. So I know a lot of doctors bring their own cups to Pete's, Starbucks, wherever they go, right? And they get it in their stainless steel cup. Um, Plastic food and water storage is another big source of PBA. Canned beans, right? So I eat a lot of beans. Canned beans have PBA in the lining, so it's better to always even get frozen if you can't, don't have the time to soak and make your own beans. PBAs are endocrine disruptors, and they do cause infertility, obesity, and mood disorders. This is a really important study I wanted to just share with you. Okay, so this is back in 2009, and they were finding that BPA blocked the effect of chemotherapy. Okay, why aren't these people responding to chemotherapy? So it blocked the effects of all doses of doxorubicin and cisplatin. Okay, there were other chemo agents that it hampered, but it didn't totally block. And the first thought was it was the estrogen effects, right? Because remember, BPA is a xenoestrogen and can stimulate an estrogen receptor. But it wasn't that. What it actually did is prevent cell death, right? Even when we were treating it with chemotherapy. So anyone on a cancer journey, surviving cancer, um, we can really focus, just on eliminating BPA from our life. Okay, so I just wanted to check in. That was a lot. I hope everyone's feeling okay. I just wanted to check the chat. Um, let's see. Farm salmon from Norway. Yeah, I know. I've heard of that too. I know it's fattier than the, the wild fish and it does taste better. I agree with you. Yes, it still has the plastics in it. It does still have the plastics in it. Yes, the answer is E, always all the above, right? That's when you become a doctor, you're an expert at taking a test. So, yes, all of the above is the answer. Um, okay, great. So, washing your hands after touching a thermal receipt, it only takes, yes, definitely wash your hands after, but it only takes 2 seconds. Um, for it to absorb, right? So it's always good to wash your hands. It gets a lot of other stuff off of your hands too that we're exposed to. Dust carries a lot of heavy metals and chemicals, and we open our car, we touch doorknobs, we're in exposure to dust. So yeah, always washing your hands is good. I just say no receipt, thank you. I try to at least. Okay, so next up is all positive, how to reduce our exposures, and we'll try to get out of the negative stuff. I hope nobody's feeling too overwhelmed. Okay, so reducing arsenic, right? Let's reduce that number one source. So, since rice is such a big issue, and it used to be that California rice was the safest choice, now there's more soil pollution, and all rice needs to be tended to carefully. First thing you could do is try different grains, right? Like quinoa, polenta. But another nice trick for rice is to soak it for sure, soak it, um, and then also to boil it, right? And I do see some people boil their rice, but if you boil it just for about 3 minutes and then throw out that water, don't keep that water, throw out that raw water, rinse the rice. It will reduce the arsenic by about half. Now, brown rice has more arsenic than white rice because it collects in that fibrous shell. Okay, just to let you know. Choosing organic, antibiotic free chicken is better. Washing your hands, like we mentioned. Filtering your water. We will be talking about water filters, and I'll give you some great examples so you don't have to spend hours researching. And then fruit juices, right? So there is arsenic in fruit, especially in apples. The seed of the apple has arsenic in it. And so apple juice is a big source of arsenic. So just limit your fruit juices. Okay, lead. All right. So removing your shoes when you get home is good. Um, be careful, like my friend, about older toys and older paints. Wash your hands, filtering your water. Now, a lot of lead comes from corrosion in pipes. As a matter of fact, historically, it's interesting that one of the falls of the Roman Empire was leaded pipes. And when we let the water run for a little bit, it gets rid if there's corrosion. Now, a lot of pipes have been replaced and there's less exposure to lead, but there is still some possibility. The water filter, of course, is better than just letting it run. Okay, mercury. So the biggest source of mercury is going to be, fish and fillings, and there's some in water as well. This is a low mercury fish. I divided it into ones that have higher omega-3s, which are so good for us, and then ones that are still healthy and low in mercury, but low omega-3s. And you'll have this for your reference. And then these are fish that you really are too high in mercury to eat regularly, and definitely to avoid if you're pregnant. Okay. Um, I used to have shark and swordfish and tuna all the time, and I just stopped having them. Okay, BPA. So this is how we're going to get rid of BPA. Okay, so try not to get packaged food. Now, of course, food comes all the time in packages. I shop at Trader Joe's. Everything is in a plastic clamshell. So what you could do is take it out of that as soon as possible. I have a thing for a vegetable and fruit rinse in the next slide. So you wash it. And then always try to get rid of the canned vegetables as much as possible. Heating in plastic is a big issue, even if, and I've experienced this, I'll get something that's frozen and looks like it's in paper, but then you take the food out and there was a lining of plastic in that paper. I was like, ah. So avoid heating in plastic. That heat just drives the plastic right into the food. We already talked about bringing, coffee cup. For cooking, a really good way to start avoidance is by just start in your kitchen, right? So any nonstick Teflon pans, just get rid of them. There's safer alternatives. I have those alternatives listed here. And then as far as I'll call it Tupperware or storage containers, just get rid of all the plastic ones. Now get glass. The glass ones will sometimes have a rubber top. Most of the times I'll say have a rubber top, but just be sure the food doesn't touch the top. Okay, that will protect you. And then if you go to heat up that food, don't heat it with a top on. Okay, if you want to keep the food moist, you could just sprinkle the water on it, or you could put a paper towel on top. Okay. Okay. Now, does anybody know about the Dirty Dozen? I think we talked about this before in the food lecture, right? Um, so this is the Dirty Dozen. This is the recent one. It just came out. Okay, 2025 Dirty Dozen. Spinach, strawberries, all these healthy foods. If you notice, it's mostly the thin-skinned fruits, right? And then potatoes are, grown in the ground, so those tend to be a little bit more contaminated. Um, just try to get organic for these, all the time. There's lots of sources. Is it more expensive? Yes, it is more expensive. So just do your best. And then if you do get, strawberries that aren't organic, do the washing, right? And that's, I think, the next slide. Let's see. Yes, washing your produce. So this is a really good way. This has been studied. I actually read a couple of studies. Everybody know that America's Test Kitchen. That's a really fun cooking space to learn about cooking and the science of cooking. They did experiments about washing produce and they found this to be the most effective. So it's basically filling a big basin with water. I just use my sink and I plop the strawberries or the lettuce in there. And then I sprinkle, some baking soda on. They did 2 teaspoons, I just sprinkle it on and make it about 2 teaspoons. And you can either soak it. Sometimes I'll soak it and I'll go do something. Sometimes I forget about it and come back. But if you don't have time for that, you could just agitate it for 30 seconds. it's been shown to be very effective at removing stuff from the outside, right? So it's going to remove pesticides and chemicals, and it will help with some heavy metals. Um, and the way America's Test Kitchen did this is theirs was specific for pesticides, but they tested the fruit before with a litmus test for pesticides, and it was positive. And then they did this, and then they did it again. It was negative. So this is effective and is worth it to do. When you're finishing, uh, scoop it up. So if you look at the bottom of the sink, you'll see all sorts of stuff. Just sort of scoop it up, and you could put it in a strainer and then let that drain, and then take the strainer and rinse it. So you get everything, just an extra little washing, and you get the baking soda off. Okay. Okay. So the next one is water. I'm going to see if there's any. Oh, I'm running out of time a little bit. Let me just see if there's any questions. Yes, ceramic nonstick pans are safe. Silicone tops are okay. It's more of an inert substance, but I still wouldn't heat with it. Okay. Um, okay, good. All right, so water. This is the Environmental Working Group. The Environmental Working Group is a great resource for everything we're learning today. ewg.org is their website. Um, you just put in your zip code here, and I'll show you what happens. So this is the zip code for our office here, okay? And you could see that these are the chemicals that are there. And okay, you're like, okay, what do I do with this information, right? So there's another button you can click on that website, and it shows you what you can do. So it lists the water contaminants here, and then it tells you, okay, a carbon filter will remove 4, but reverse osmosis will remove 5. Okay, so reverse osmosis does have a carbon component to it, but there's an extra stage where it pushes the resulting water through a very thin membrane to remove even more chemicals and heavy metals. So reverse osmosis is a little bit stronger than carbon filter. And the one that it removes is, in addition, is hexavalent chromium, which is the Aaron Brockovich chemical. Okay, so this is a great resource to use. You just put in your zip code and see what you need to get. Now, if you do want to get a water filter, here's some research I did for you already. The big thing to know is that you do need to change them on schedule. If you do have like a significant contamination, like you remember in Michigan, they had a terrible arsenic poisoning and lead poisoning. Uh, they gave out Brita filters for free, right? That was supplied to a lot of the communities, but you had to change them. Not, you had to change it often, because the larger the contaminant, the less the carbon filter will last. So you do have to change the filters. And then a lot of them, like the Brita, is in a plastic jug. So after it goes through the filter, put it into glass. Okay, store it in glass. That's really important. There's some that now have a glass pitcher. Okay, but try to minimize that water's exposure to plastic as much as possible. Carbon filters that are good, I listed a couple here. Dr. Pizzorno, who I mentioned earlier, has a carbon block on his home in Canada. He uses Aquasana. Aquasana is a great company. But there's also countertop carbon filters if you don't want to install it in your house. The advantage to installing in your house is if it gets the shower also, right? And there is some topical exposure to your skin. Reverse osmosis, here's some great ones. I had the countertop AquaTrue. Um, that's the one I was using in the past. Okay, beverages. Just a quick mention that alcohol, we talked about water and how to clean water. Just remind you other things that we drink, right? So alcohol is metabolized to a direct toxin, aldehyde. And then distilling alcohol introduces toxins, heavy metals, right? So a wine can have lead in it. There can also be cadmium in liquors. So just something to think about. Fruit juices, we sort of mentioned, can concentrate heavy metals. And then the soda cans are lined. Sometimes you'll see these, new healthy drinks, right? They have probiotics in them, or they have adaptogens in them, but they're in a can that's lined with PBA. So just something to consider. Okay, air quality. All right, so we're going to take care of particulate matter. We're going to take care of chemicals. Um, Now in your home, I'm just going to jump to the last one here. Um, you can get an air filter for your home. This is the one I have in my house. Anything above a MERV 12 is good. Okay, so you don't have to get a MERV 16, but anything a MERV 12 or higher. Um, Air purifiers, right? There's a lot of advertising on, on air purifiers. And these are two very, very good companies, and they're not overpriced because I could see one for like $1,000. I'm like, that's ridiculous. But the Coe has been tested, and Wirecutter, the New York Times reviewing, they really like Coe. IntelliPure is also excellent. Um, Dusting and decluttering your house really gets rid of those toxins that are on dust. Okay. So hopefully that will help you with the air quality in your home. Opening the windows also helps at times, because we have chemicals in our home. So even though there's air pollution outside, just airing out your house every once in a while does help. Okay, personal products. The Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, has a part of their website called Clean Beauty or Skin Deep, and they have a great listing of things that are safer choices. Aluminum deodorant is linked to breast cancer, 100%. Upper outer quadrant breast cancer. So please try alternatives to aluminum-based deodorant. And then look for low VOC products. We talked about removing plastics from the kitchen. That's it. So that's it for avoidance. I know it was a lot of information. I have a question. Any suggested alternatives for healthy plant-based milks? A lot of them have, accumulate the toxins. I mean, I think water is the best thing, but you can have some of them. You can have some of them. Just limit the amount. Um, oh, any non-dairy milks that are okay. Yeah, they all can have this problem, unfortunately. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so how we detoxify. So I mentioned before that I think it's really important to learn how we detoxify so that we can do it safely. And these are the organs that are really involved in our detoxification process. We evolved this way, right? Um, and I just want you to look here. This is the liver and gallbladder, what happens there. So I just want you to look at toxins, and then there's a big thing there with spikes, and then oh, look, the toxins attached to a carrier molecule, right? So there's a couple of phases. In between the first phase and the second phase, there's danger, okay, because it becomes reactive. And we have ways of, antioxidants and glutathione really help with those metabolites. And the important stuff about phase one and phase two is supporting them equally. Phase one has to do with the cytochrome P450 system, and it could be affected by genetics. We all have different, speeds of our enzymes. So genetics can affect how we metabolize. And that's why one person can get sick from the same exposure and the other person's perfectly fine, right? It's because of our genetic differences. Um, Foods and medications affect the P450 system. The best example I think that we'll all be aware of is grapefruit and cholesterol medication, right? So grapefruit blocks that CYP enzyme and can cause higher levels of cholesterol medication that's safe. So that's why food can affect that phase one. Okay. Now, phase two is the final step. It makes it able to leave our body. It's attached to a carrier, and there's different chemical processes. People do have genetic differences on how they methylate, glucuronidate, or sulfate. Some people are need a little support there, I'll say. Okay, and so that's something that you can learn about yourself. We could do special testing for that. Okay, then after it goes through the liver, this is really important, right? So your liver has done all that work. It's got this cute little bundle it wants to get rid of, but you have to get it out of your body. Now, sometimes it goes into the urine, which is great, and there's ways to support your kidney. But most of it goes out in our stool. But it's really important. This is why gut health is really important to detoxification. And that's why when I'm ever detoxifying someone or starting these programs, we always address gut health first, because if there's bacterial overgrowth, If there's chronic constipation, you could see here the toxins decoupled from its carrier molecule and just gets reabsorbed. Okay. And not only does this happen to mercury and other toxins, but it also happens with estrogen. Okay. And so it's a really important thing to think about. Okay, the kidney, of course, removes multiple toxins, staying hydrated, doing things that are good for the kidney. Non-steroidals are damaging to the kidney, so minimizing those. There's some foods I listed there that really help the kidney, okay, and managing blood pressure and blood sugar are really important. Okay, the skin. All right, some people forget about the skin, but the skin is super important. There was a doctor named Dr. Stephen Genius, very well named. He's also Canadian. And he did some studies called the blood, urine, and sweat studies. And what he found is a lot of stuff is removed from the sweat, sometimes even more than the urine. Now, does it matter how you sweat? Should you be in a wet sauna, a dry sauna, infrared sauna? What about exercising? They're all good. They're all the same. All his studies showed that. So, however you want to get your sweat on is great to do. After you sweat, of course, rinse, okay? Get all that stuff off your skin. And a really positive thing to see is you see here, it does remove heavy metals, but some of these things that are harder to remove, these persistent organic pollutants, the forever chemicals, can come out in your sweat. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Okay. So how to support. So I mentioned that, if you're not set up, that problems can happen, right? So if you're constipated, if you're dehydrated, you're just going to reabsorb those toxins, okay? If you have a nutritional deficiency, your liver detoxification system isn't going to work well, and those toxins are going to get stuck in that intermediate metabolite space where it can cause a lot of damage. Um, the bacterial overgrowth, again, will cause recirculation. And then anything that's stressing your body out, like high blood sugar, even over exercising, smoking, and alcohol, can make you sick and not be able to detox well. Okay. So how do we start? So we start the opposite direction. Okay. So we start with phase three. That's really the most important thing to support, right? So preventing constipation and dehydration is really key. Staying hydrated, at least 1.5 liters of clean water a day. Fiber, when we were evolving, we probably used to eat 100 grams of fiber a day, right? But now it's sometimes can be a challenge to get 30 or 35. So fiber is super important. It does trap some of these chemicals and heavy metals in your colon and help them be eliminated. And then regular exercise, not only for sweat, but it also helps prevent constipation. Okay, so that's super easy way to start, right? Just here's a quick slide about fiber. I'll make this available to you in the future so you can have that. And then supporting liver detoxification, which would be the next one, phase two and phase one, is eating well, right? You cannot take a supplement to replace a healthy diet. Healthy diet's the most important thing because you get all the micronutrients, nutrients we don't even know about, right? The polyphenols, the flavonoids, all these great, antioxidants that are natural that we can give our body, how we evolved. And then you also get the fiber. Okay, so eating a healthy diet is the most important thing. And then for certain genetic differences, you might need more B vitamins. If you have a methylation defect, hello, B vitamins are definitely something that you might need to take. Um, some of these minerals too, I just want to mention selenium and zinc are really important. The smoking speeds up phase one detoxification, I just wanted to mention, and produces more of those toxic metabolites. And then this is just a quick list of things that are really healthy for your liver. Cruciferous vegetables provides sulforaphane, which helps with phase two detoxification and phase one. Protein. Whey powder has cysteine in it, which helps produce glutathione, and then polyphenols and the rest of the list here. Now, some people with gut dysbiosis or a sensitive gut might have a problem eating cruciferous vegetables and some of these healthier foods. As a matter of fact, Dr. Shore, when I eat healthy foods, my stomach hurts. It's like, well, you probably do have a dysbiosis then. That's one of the signs. but you can have green powders and vegetable broths while we're healing your gut. Okay, and then here's some quick supplements. I divided it into two groups. The first group is liver support, those antioxidants. Glutathione can be supported with N-acetylcysteine. Dr. Pizzorno recommends, just 250 milligrams just twice a week to help with your glutathione stores. And then the second group is phase 3 support, so fiber, chlorella, bacteria that have been shown to support detoxification, and then binders, right? So binders can come as charcoal or zeolite, but foods also act as binder, and some of the most potent are okra, and you can get okra as an okra powder or beet powder, which is also good for hypertension. Okay, and then for skin, this is the right way to do a sauna. Okay, if you want to do a sauna, you should hydrate before with some alkaline electrolyte water, and then the time is 20 minutes twice a week. Just so you know. Okay. So this is the plan. I think this is the end. This is our plan. So we're going to focus on avoidance. Okay. There's a lot of steps there, a lot of good things to do. Now, things like, I think I mentioned this already, some of the heavy metals go out quickly. Arsenic has a very short half-life, just days, hours to days. So you can get arsenic out of your system in a couple of weeks. Usually takes 4 half-lives. So avoidance is really good. Then we focus on support, right? Replacing our nutrients. You can come and get tested for nutrient depletions. Kidney and liver support, staying hydrated. And then the last step, if you need it, you're going to feel much better after just step 1 and 2. But if you need more, then the last step is detoxification. And detoxification is done sort of late in the journey, actually. You have to make sure the second step, all the supportive stuff, is really in place. If you are burning fat for whatever reason, fat stores a lot of toxins, and you might want to take one of those binders I mentioned, either a charcoal or zeolite, or just the food binders, beets and okra. That will help remove those toxins from your body as you lose fat. Okay. All right, and these are just your resources. Dr. Joe Pizzorno has a great book. He's a great educator, and he's a lot of stuff on YouTube as well. And there's the Environmental Working Group. Okay, well, I wish I could talk to all you guys, but thank you for coming. Let's see if there's any questions, I guess. Let's see, I think, oh, let's see, whey protein okay if I am sensitive to dairy. So it just depends. Dairy has casein and whey, so we'd have to see if you're sensitive to whey. Um, Fiber site. You know what I'll do is I'm going to send a PDF to Rochelle, and she can email the PDF to you guys. But I can go back to the fiber slide. Um, and there you go. Yes, PVC pipes they do have a lot of chemicals in them. So that's a good reason not to drink from the water hose, right? Um, yes, I'll do the PCF. Please answer my questions above if time. Okay, let me go above. Uh, whey protein, any alternatives? Lynn Chang. So Lynn, you asked, what about nonstick without the bad chemicals? There's about 4 bad chemicals in nonstick. Yeah, so I like ceramic for nonstick. I use Caraway in my house. I like them very much. It's not too expensive. Also, cast iron is great as a stainless steel. Stainless steel, you have to get the right temperature so it doesn't stick. AquaTrue, yeah, AquaTrue is great. Yeah, they do have an under the sink. Okay, water distiller. Yeah, for PBA and cans, sometimes it's labeled, sometimes it's not. And then there's new plastic coatings too, like the PBS I mentioned, which aren't so good for you. So there's a way it's still bad. Will organic rice help with arsenic? Yes, it can help a little bit because there's arsenic and pesticides, but the arsenic's also in the soil and the water. So you still should soak it and boil it if you can. Yes, so for recording, all of these videos are on YouTube. They'll be on CCC Integrative Medicine, which stands for Comprehensive Cancer Center Integrative Medicine. All of the 5 videos will be there for you to watch, but I'll send this PDF out because there's so much information on it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is the last webinar, but we'll do more in the future. And the karaoke event is next week if you want to join us for a community event. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you around the clinic. Bye.